Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to Mysteries from Beyond the Other Dominion. I'm your host, Dr. Franklin Rule, and today we're going to present you with new evidence that the Sphinx was built by aliens, tell you about the night that Christopher Columbus spotted a UFO, show you the world's largest mushroom, the so-called humongous fungus, and report on the seance involving the late actor William Holden, and of course, cover other intriguing subjects. Now, the riddle of the Sphinx and the question of whether or not the Sphinx was built by aliens. In Greek mythology, the Sphinx was depicted as a lion that had the face of a woman and the wings of an eagle. When wayfarers would pass by her, they were asked a riddle. If they answered correctly, they'd get great wealth and power. Incorrectly, and death. Now, that riddle was as follows. What creature moves on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening? The answer, man. The idea being that in the morning of his life, as an infant, he moves on 4 legs or crawls about. In the afternoon of his life, walks on 2 legs, and in the evening of his life, he needs a crutch or 3rd leg. Now, the Sphinx dimensionality is approximately 189 feet long, 70 feet high, with a head that ranges from 30 feet from crown to chin. Now, I say approximately because of shifting sands, the dimensionality of the Sphinx has changed over the centuries. Indeed, many centuries ago, wayfarers would actually speak in its ear because its body was covered in sand up to its head. The question is, whose face is on the Sphinx? Some said it was Hamatras, who was one of the embodiments of the Egyptian sun god Ra. Others claimed it was the pharaoh Chephren. However, recent evidence has shown that Chephren was a fraud. What he did was take the existing face of the Sphinx and try to change it so it looked like him. Now, the Sphinx is believed to have been built about 2500 BC, or about 4,500 years ago. However, we have new dramatic evidence, actually from left field, from Dr. Robert Schoch, who comes from Boston University. He's a geologist, and he analyzed erosional patterns around the Sphinx and determined that it's far older than we believed. At least 7,000 BC that it was built, possibly even before that. In other words, it may be 9,000 years old or even older than that. Now, that has the so-called Egyptologists up in arms because they've claimed that there was no formal Egyptian society at that time capable of creating the Sphinx. And of course, that's what the ufologists have been waiting for. They claim that it could not have been built by Egyptians, but rather with alien aid or by aliens. Now, you might add, why would aliens create a Sphinx? And of course, with the Sphinx, possibly the 3 great pyramids. Well, one thought is that those pyramids served as landing guides for a UFO field on the Gaza Strip. If you doubt that, then how can you explain the existence of the Sphinx and the 3 great pyramids built possibly 7,000 BC or earlier, where there is no formal Egyptian society? This is one of the most dramatic discoveries in the field of geology and ufology. Now, when we return, we're going to tell you about the night that Christopher Columbus spotted a UFO. Stay tuned. Don't go away. Welcome once again. And now it's time for the night that Christopher Columbus spotted a UFO. But first, your trivia question of the day. Let me extricate it here from its paper prison. The question for you today: what was Christopher Columbus's name in Spanish? Now, the prize, the only prize, is 1 pat on the back that you'll have to administer to yourself if and only if you have the correct answer. Now, I'll take a sip of water and give you a few seconds on that. Okay, time's up. Again, what was Columbus's name in Spanish? It was Cristobal Colon. Now, on August 3rd, 1492, he set sail for the New World aboard the Santa Maria. He also had with him the Nina and the Pinta. On the night of September 15th, 1492, he spotted a UFO in the sky. He described it as a mysterious fiery object that descended into the sea. He was in the Sargasso Sea at that time, which is part of the Bermuda Triangle. Now, why would he describe it as a mysterious fiery object when he, as a veteran sailor, certainly had seen shooting stars, i.e. comets, before? If it was a comet, why not call it such? That's why we think it may have been a UFO entering the Triangle area, going to an underwater UFO base. A few nights later, the equipment went haywire, such as the compass, as though they were passing over some sort of an electromagnetic field. Again, that could have been associated with an underwater UFO base. The next day, October 12th, land was spotted. I should point out that Columbus lied to his men. He kept 2 logbooks, one for himself where he estimated that the average speed per day was about 18 logs, that is 54 miles per day. The second book contained an estimate of 15 leagues per day, which he showed to his men. In other words, he's afraid that the men would get upset if they thought they were too far from land and possibly mutiny. So he showed them that they were traveling less further out than he thought. However, the irony was that his phony logbook was correct. He himself was overestimating how much distance they were traveling each day. And by the way, he was also a cheat. One man on October 11th, that one night, before they spotted land in the daytime, was in the crow's nest, and he saw land first. But Columbus took credit. Why? Because there was a prize of 10,000 gold pieces for the first man to spot land, and Columbus claimed that prize. By the way, he suffered from a disease known as Reiter's syndrome. That's capital R-E-I-T-E-R'(S). For any of you taking notes, it's a form of arthritis. On his 4th voyage to the New World near Santo Domingo in 1502, he sensed that a storm was coming. Now, as you may know, arthritis patients can sense storms because as pressure decreases, their afflicted joints start to act up. He took his ship into safe harbor and even warned his enemy, the government of Santo Domingo, to take cover. Instead, the man took 4 ships out on his way to Spain. 3 of those ships sank, and the governor died. Columbus proved himself to be correct, and this is just one more intriguing fact about Columbus heard only on Mysteries from Beyond the Other Dominion. Now it's time for the humongous fungus, the world's largest mushroom. The mushrooms are technically fungi, which are parasitic plants that lack chlorophyll, so they have to drain off the lifeblood from other plants and trees. They come in a wide spectrum of shapes and sizes. Let's take a look at a few here. For example, here we have the common table mushroom, which has a cap, gills, and stem. Now here's the portobello mushroom, much larger, and look at that gill structure. Isn't that amazing? All these are edible, of course. Now we have the Japanese enoki mushroom. It has the same shape, but a very small size and long stem. But if you looked at it, dissected it, it'd be identical to the first 2. Thirdly, we have this greasy woodier mushroom. Very expensive, considered quite a delicacy. Next, the so-called oyster mushroom, so named because it looks a lot like an oyster. And lastly, the golden chanterelle, one of the world's most expensive delicacies, at up to $49.99 per pound. Unbelievable, but we spare no expense on Mysteries from Beyond the Other Dominion. Of course, all these are going back as soon as the show is over. By the way, if you buy some of these expensive mushrooms, don't put them in a plastic bag. You'll be paying $49.99 per pound for the bag too. Put them on the counter, let them put them in a plastic bag after they've been rung up. Little consumer tip heard only on our show. Now up in Mount Adams, Washington recently, they discovered what we're calling the world's largest mushroom, the so-called humongous fungus. It is an incredible 1,500 acres in dimensionality, weighs 9 to 10 million pounds, and is 400 to 1,000 years old. Now, we sent a crew up there to show it to you. Roll tape.
I'm Ken Russell, and we're heading up towards Mount Adams through a little place called Draper Springs, and we're looking at a very beautiful ponderosa pine forest that's being slowly attacked by a rather virulent fungus we call the armillaria root rot fungus. And it kills the trees when the fungus gets in the stumps, the old stumps of the old forest, and gradually transfers by root contact into the new forest. and then the new forest spreads it from tree to tree, and the disease just takes off. And of course, the press has nicknamed it the humongous fungus, which seems to do quite well. I'm looking under the bark to see if I can see if there is a growth of the fungus underneath the bark. And that's what I'm looking for. This is it right here, and it grows right between the bark and the woody cylinder of the tree. It doesn't penetrate the woody cylinder, but it's just like rubber. You can see how rubbery, and it's almost stretchy. And it's very easy for someone to learn to identify. And what happens is the cells are all killed here. This part of the inner bark is where the food comes down from the needles, and when the fungus moves up and kills those cells, they just don't conduct any liquids and food anymore, so the tree simply dies and the material leaks out and causes the tree to bleed. And what it's doing is moving into a few of the smaller saplings here, and even though there's a nice regrowth of pine here and it looks very nice, all these trees are doomed. Within 15 years, many of these trees will be dead. We're standing in a pile of stumps that represent the old forest, and these stumps are the food base for this bad guy fungus. And we need to get these stumps out of the ground so they don't transfer the fungus to the new forest, which is going to grow up here in a very short few years. We're trying to make this life as tough for this fungus as we can. We don't necessarily want to totally kill it out, because we probably can't, but we just want to make life tough for it. The fungus will win eventually, and then just junk forest will take over.
Now, there's also a humongous fungus discovered up in the northern peninsula of Michigan that's a slightly bit smaller. It's only 40 acres wide, and it also is believed to be 220,000 pounds in weight, maybe up to 1,500 years old, and it's believed there may even be other, even larger fungi throughout the world. Now, my question, could these be alien spores that were floating through space, became entrapped in our planet's gravitational field, and finally took root in terrestrial soil? Think about that as we go on to the seance involving the late actor William Holden. Now, back in 1981, he died under what were called questionable circumstances. In 1983, specifically in January, the Extension of Life Foundation, headquartered down in Durham, North Carolina, decided to hold a seance to determine what happened the night he died. Now, this group is highly regarded in parapsychological circles. They apply scientific methods to paranormal phenomena. The group was headed by Patricia Hayes, Janice Hayes, Cheryl Burns, and William Clemma. The seance took place in a studio in Hollywood, California. Now, an unusual aspect of this was that they were telephonically linked to a man named Hal Cope in Honolulu, Hawaii. Cope was a close personal friend of Holden. He spent many years with him in Africa. When the seance began, the members held hands and concentrated on the center of the table they were sitting at. Within 7 minutes, they felt a warmth developing. They were certain they were in contact with the spirit of William Holden. They started to ask him questions and received answers. Now, I want to stress, first of all, they did not claim they saw any light in the center of the table, no apparition, no ghost, and they did not hear his voice. However, they felt his warmth and heard his answers to their questions telepathically. Simultaneously, Cope also claimed he was feeling the warmth of his good friend, William Holden. It was as though the spirit of Holden was darting back and forth between LA and Honolulu. At one point, Cope said he felt the hand of his friend on his shoulder. But again, he did not claim he saw him or heard his voice. One member of the team, Clemma, asked if he had been killed. Holden answered that his death was totally accidental, that he tripped after having too much to drink. This is one of the most intriguing cases of a seance in the annals of parapsychology. Often when a man dies, the Latin phrase, sic transit gloria mundi, is uttered, which means quickly fades worldly glory. In the case of the actor William Holden, that may not be true. Now, coming up, the people with the smelliest job in America. You've got to see this. Welcome back, and now as promised, the people with the smelliest job in America. But first, a few facts about olfaction, the sense of smell. Do you know that it takes just a very few molecules to trigger the sense of a smell? Behind us, we're going to see a microscopic blow-up of the inside of a human nose. Smell is intimately linked to taste. You can test this out yourself. Just hold your nose next time you eat something. You'll find that its taste has diminished appreciably. This is particularly true with chocolate, cherries, and coffee, but it applies to just about any other food. And did you know that chloroform, which we normally associate as a smell, is actually a taste? And did you know that smell can kill? We had a recent case of a woman in Treviso, Italy. She was a census taker who was allergic to milk. She went to a dairy, whiffed some milk, went into anaphylactic shock, and dropped dead. How about that? Now, up at Hilltop Research in Cincinnati, Ohio, we have individuals who are called odor judges. They actually sniff human feet, armpits, kitty litter, diapers, and anything else with an offensive odor. The goal, of course, is to test ingredients that are designed to subdue those offensive odors. Please note that the majority of these smell judges are females. No prejudice involved. They test everyone thoroughly for the job. They find that females simply have more acute olfactory senses. And by the way, these judges are tested year in and year out. If their sniffers go on the blink, out they go. Now, if you think you have the sniffer that qualifies for the job, contact them up at Hilltop Research in Cincinnati, Ohio. I wouldn't want the job, but maybe you would. And we want to thank Shearing Plow Healthcare Products for this intriguing film. Coming up next, our amazing world of bizarre medicine. Please stay tuned. Despite appearances, I'm a PhD, not an MD, but I've always been fascinated by the world of bizarre medicine. Let's see what's in the little black bag today. A gun and an asthma inhaler. This reminds me of the recent case up in Rochester, New York of a 48-year-old woman who suffered from asthma. One night, she reached under her pillow for her asthma inhaler because she's having an attack and wound up shooting herself in the jaw. Now, please, don't keep both your gun and your asthma inhaler under your pillow. Only one or the other, and be sure you know which one it is. We can't afford to lose even one of you out there. We've got to keep our ratings straight up. Welcome back. And now it's time for our consumer tip segment. Have you noticed that I have this thermos on my desk? It's our Mysteries from Beyond the Other Dominion thermos. Well, have you ever had coffee left over in the morning? You hate to throw it out because that's wasteful. On the other hand, if you reheat it for lunch or dinner, it has that good old burn taste. What's the solution? You use a thermos. First, flush it out with hot water to heat it up. Then add that coffee from breakfast and save it for either lunch or dinner. Now, it's not going to make you a millionaire, but it will save you a few cents and reduce the extent to which you're being ripped off by our society. And remember, you heard it here first. Now it's time for our video mailbag. We have a question from one of our loyal viewers, Arthur Maturo of Altadena, California. Let's hear his question.
Hi, Dr. Rule. I'm a big fan of your show. And I know if anyone can solve this problem for me, you sure can. Each week, I have a seance at my house, which is really a lot of fun. But we keep on managing to spill candle wax all over the carpet. Do you have any idea how I can make it come off?
Well, Arthur, that was a tough one, but we sent it to our laboratory and came up with the following solution. Put a piece of paper over the hardened wax, such as a paper towel, and a hot iron over that. Now run it over that paper towel several times. That's right, like that. Now that melts the wax and allows you to pull it right up without damaging the carpet. Okay, that's enough. Now pull it off. Good. See, the wax is gone. We've tested it many times. It works very well. If you have a tip for us, or a question, or an answer, such as an intriguing fact you've uncovered, put yourself before the camcorder and mail it to us. Or if you have video footage of a UFO, Bigfoot, ghost, or lake monster, again, send it to us at P.O. Box 847, Glendale, California, 91209. Now, we don't guarantee to use it, but if we do, you'll have a small measure of fame, and that's a lot better than a slap on the belly with a wet trout. Now, until next time, may the power of the universe be with you.